Welcome back to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I am your host, Joey Nicotra, here today with my co-host and good friend, Mr. Shane Reitzammer. Shane, I am pumped for our guest today, brother.
Oh, yeah, man. We've got a legend in the CinemaStory household name, Cecilia Stevenson. This girl goes back. She's a great friend, great producer, and just all-around good person.
She is, man. She has been with the company since, what, 2020-ish?
2019, I think.
2019, even before then, man. So she has definitely produced countless projects for us, and most recently, Triumph of the Heart, which is a film that takes place in Poland, as her first feature film that she basically single-handedly produced. Man, her story was just really, really interesting today. Not only did she dive into some of how she produced the film, but lots of really cool takeaways on just culture fits inside of like the production crew, and how misplacing the wrong person due to status of how good they are can ultimately, come at the film's detriment.
Man, one of my favorite things that she covered was the funding aspect.
Yeah, I was going to say the budget piece is huge.
This is something that you don't want to sleep on. What you will hear in this episode about how they raised the money for this feature film taught me some things, and I've been watching their journey and just seeing how they did this. I'm a strategy marketing guy, and so I live a lot on the business side, but I love the creative. And so seeing what they did, and they did it so successfully, and they're continuing to be successful. So yeah, I'm excited to jump into this story with everyone, and you're going to love what you find out on this episode of the Rough Cut Club. So let's
jump in.
Roll the tape.
Roll the tape. Cecilia Stevenson, welcome to the show. So good to have you in the studio.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Dude, it's so good to have you here, man. For those that don't know, Ceci is she is family in the CinemaStory house and in the Rough Cut Clubhouse. And so
Rough Cut Clubhouse.
Dang, I just did something right there. That was actually pretty sick.
Yeah,
that was sick.
We've been goofing off all day in the Rough Cut Clubhouse with her pre-show.
We were like,
do we have to even record the show? We just want to catch up with her.
Just hang out.
That's it, man.
Yeah, Ceci goes back with the CinemaStory team to what, 2020? 2019?
We tried to start in 2019, and then a little thing happened in 2020, so it took a year.
COVID? Yeah. Dang, forgot about that little guy. Well,
always
anyway,
getting in the way.
Dude, you just got back from a gnarly production that we actually had the lovely opportunity to talk with the DP while y'all were in pre-production, Andrew Holshoe. And so for those who have been listening for a long time, if you caught that episode, this is the amazing producer behind making that movie happen. And so we're excited to jump in. But, to kick this thing off, tell us about like the project that you've been working on and just, overall where you guys are at with it and what's been going on with Triumph of the Heart.
You know the rules. I will choose 10 of you to starve until the missing prisoner is found or until death.
Yeah. So Triumph of the Heart is a feature film. It's based on a true story of St. Maximilian Kolbe. He is a Catholic saint, a Polish priest, and he died in Auschwitz. And so just quick synopsis as the story goes, there were he was captured by the Nazis, thrown into Auschwitz, and a prisoner escaped. And so the Nazi commandant guy, what they would do is the punishment was to choose 10 men at random to die by starvation. And so they lined all the prisoners up, and he went to choose the 10 men that were going to die. One of the men started begging for his life, screaming please, no, not me. I have a wife, I have children. Maximilian Kolbe steps forward out of line, miraculously was not shot by the Nazis, and said, I volunteer to take this man's place. And the Nazis agreed. And so that man, Franciszek was his name, he was saved. He actually survived Auschwitz as well. And Maximilian then went into the starvation cell with those 9 other men. And so that's where our film starts, with that, him volunteering. And so then they actually survived about 14 days. A handful of them, they slowly died off. And Maximilian and I think about 3 other guys, they lived about 2 weeks. And so our film is primarily about what happened in that cell. And, we don't know all of what happened in that cell. There are some eyewitness accounts of, singing and just like things like that. And obviously they lived for 2 weeks. And so there was something driving them to like try and survive. And so people who survived Auschwitz, they spoke to, who Maximilian was, like while he was in Auschwitz, like while he was, out of the cell and just like with the rest of the prisoners, the kind of man that he was, the character that he had, all these things. And so there's eyewitness accounts that we can like look at to try and figure out like what actually happened. But a lot of it, we take creative liberties. The writer of the film, the writer and director, Anthony D'Ambrosio, he actually had a like personal experience, like in his own faith journey, and like basically met and encountered, not in real life, but Maximilian Kolbe kind of just spiritually, and like would meditate on Maximilian's time in that cell and how he might have been ministering to those other men. And so Anthony, was going through this very dark time in his life, and he would just picture himself in that cell with Kolbe and thinking about like what Kolbe might say to him. And so like out of that experience, Anthony actually like came back to his faith, and just this beautiful story of like suffering, persevering through suffering, and then ultimately coming back to God and coming back to the faith. And so from that personal experience, he actually wrote a short film that I actually produced back in 2017. So we made the short film. It's, the 20-minute version of this same story, starting with Kolbe, them being thrown into the cell and then going up until they died. And, it's much more condensed. And so then, 5 years later, Anthony is inspired to like turn it into a feature film. And so he wrote the feature film, and we made it or we shot it. And so where we are right now, we got back. We actually about a year ago is when we got almost all of our funding, $300,000. We made the decision shortly thereafter that we were going to film in Poland, which is a whole thing we'll talk about, I'm sure. And we got back from Poland. We were there. I was there. Anthony and I were there August through November, so 3 months. About 6 weeks of shooting, 20 shooting days, and then came home just in time for Thanksgiving. And then I've been home since, which is great. Love being in America. And now we've done a Kickstarter campaign. We raised $160,000 on Kickstarter, and we are basically done with the first draft of the film. And so obviously from there, there's going to be multiple other drafts, and then we're going to have to get sound design and music and all these things, and then ultimately like make a distribution deal.
Wow.
So that's where we're at.
What a heavy story, but such an inspiring story. Not only, the story that y'all are telling, but the story to get this executed, and even Anthony's journey to write the film.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That he, because we don't know what happened in the cell, but he was able to draw some of that from his own personal life experience and what he might imagine, he would say to him. That's super cool. And I got to touch on one, and I do want to get to Poland.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on one thing too. You made this short film in 2017.
Yeah.
How important was making that short film for making this feature film?
Oh, it's crucial. I mean, that's how Anthony got all of our investors, basically. So he would do these screening events. And really he would he's very well connected, like to begin with. So that helped a lot. But he would just like put on these like small little events, and he would ask people, like friends of his, like, hey, can we host this screening in your home? And I'm going to invite some people. You can invite some people. And, like 10, 20 people. He did like, I don't know, a dozen, 20, I don't know how many, a bunch of these things. And then just slowly over time, like people, so he would like show the short film and then basically like give his pitch for the feature film and say like, here's the story. Like if you were moved by this, this is what I'm trying to do. And like, this is, kind of my mission. Like, this is my story. This is why I like want to make this feature film, like bring hope into this world. And there's like, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of suffering. And so people would see the short film, and then they would hear his pitch, and, they would be moved. And some of them would choose to invest. And so we were able to raise $300,000.
Yeah. And I actually came to one of those
You
meetings,
did.
and that was how I got connected with Anthony and Andrew for the very first time.
Yeah.
Got to see it. And it was a really, really incredible 20-minute short film that you guys ultimately wound up not utilizing like in the actual project,
Right.
but it was like the cornerstone piece that you guys utilized to get the funding and the, resources to make the film.
Yeah.
I got to ask though, like hearing you do the pitch for like just the synopsis of the film right there, as a producer, was there a certain weight of like responsibility that you felt like you had to carry to like tell that story, because you were embellishing a little bit on, you know, what happened in that time frame, but it was very intentional, like embellishment that, you know, was done with R&D and like from Anthony's experience. Did you feel like a certain weight in bringing that story to life?
That's a great question. I personally actually have struggled to feel as connected to the story as Anthony and Andrew have been. So Anthony director, Andrew DP. They, I think, have carried that weight a lot more than I have. And as I've learned more about St. Maximilian and just gotten to know him more and like dived more into this story, I think, yeah, I do feel that certainly to an extent. But I think my producer brain, like I am so focused on like timelines and logistics and like schedules and budget and like all of these not creative things. It's very easy for me to disconnect from like the actual story and kind of like almost forget like, you know, what we're doing, like why we're doing it, all these things. And so it's good to be reminded of that and like talking with Anthony and Andrew, because they are so like deeply, especially now that they're in the edit, they're just like so like intertwined with that part of the story. And both of them feel very deeply. I mean, Andrew, even like while we were in Poland multiple times, would like tell us about how he felt that responsibility. So yeah, to answer your question, I do, but I think being disconnected a little more in my like job, not as much.
Yeah.
I love when we had Andrew on the podcast, he talked about him and Anthony, and if you haven't watched that, you should go watch that episode. But he talked about him and Anthony using Legos in pre-pro to set out the scenes. Did you witness any of these fun?
He brought them to Poland.
Oh, come on, let's go! That's so awesome. I love that. Yeah, we look forward to potentially getting Anthony on here eventually to share his story. But from a producing perspective, there's so much to unpack. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, well, before I even do that, I just want to say, y'all even changed our perspective on some of our Vivid Vision stuff, right? So we, you know, at CinemaStory, we wanted to make 4 shorts and then a feature. And then after I saw what y'all did with the short to raise funding, I go, you got to have a proof of life short film. It's such a brilliant, you know, I've heard that before, but we got to watch our friends like really practice that and be successful in it. Anyway, so thanks for, you know, paving that path in front of all of us. And we go, oh, that was the move, and y'all were successful. Anyways, congrats on that. That was awesome.
Thank you.
But I got to know about Poland. So what brought up Poland?
Yeah.
Why Poland? And were you happy that you chose Poland for your production location?
Yeah.
We'll get into all the challenges after that question. Yeah. Why and how and what was the outcome?
Yeah. So it's funny, actually. The screening event that you went to, I'm pretty sure was when we came up with this crazy idea of maybe filming in Poland. Like, how insane would that be?
I remember when we
were standing in a little circle and we were talking about it. And
I'm not even going to take all the credit here, but I think I highly encouraged the authenticity of doing it there. And it was like, I think I sparked the
Let's
flame.
go, Poland.
You might have. You get your little, yeah.
Sorry, not sorry, Ceci.
No, yeah. Sorry, not sorry is the correct response. So
she's like, yeah, I hate you now. After the fact.
Yeah, once in a lifetime experience.
Right. Yeah.
No, so we, you know, big picture, like we're making a feature film. Okay, obviously we're going to make it in America. Like, why would we even consider not making it in America? Because we like, this is where our connections are, blah, blah, blah. So like, then this, you know, crazy idea pops up. Like, what if we went to Poland and like, imagine all of the like, you know, authentic locations and like, you know, you got the wardrobe and the props and it's all just there. But it was like so impossible, like feeling like no freaking way are we going to figure out how to make a movie in a foreign country. So just kind of like tucked that away and like, that was a nice thought. And then like, as you know, I'm doing all this research trying to figure, okay, like what state are we going to film in the US, you know, all these tax incentives and trying to like, okay, can we get like some more budget from the government? How does that even work? Blah, blah, blah. Plus you got like locations to figure out. Plus you got actors and we can't like afford to fly everyone. So just thinking about all these things. And then just like over the course of thinking about all these things, I was like, dang, like this is like locations, like, like the US just doesn't have 1940s houses, European style houses. Like, where the heck are we going to film our Auschwitz exterior, you know? And like, where the heck are we going to find anything that looks remotely European, or, you know, like just all of these, I guess, like creative aspects that like things that influence like production design, right? Things that influence how the film looks and feels. We were like, you know what, maybe filming in Poland isn't actually that crazy of an idea if we like all of these things that we need, like to make the film visually, you know, like the costumes they're wearing, the like props, the like 1940s furniture, like where on earth are we going to find that in America? Like our country is like, we're a baby country, and like just anyway. So we started thinking about it more and more. And they're like, okay, well, if we film in Poland, we're going to need we're going to need Polish producers. We're going to need Polish like filmmakers like on our team. And so like, how the heck are we going to find those? So then, you know, there's just these series of like things we had to figure out in order to make it happen. And to kind of like condense all of that, we figured out a bunch of them. We found our Polish producing partners. We went to Poland in July. So Anthony and I, for about a week, to kind of just feel things out, meet them, just like see how it's going. And then after that, we're like, okay, we're doing it. Like it's official. And we made the decision. And it, you know, opened up a whole like host of other problems and challenges and things to overcome being in a foreign country, making a film for the first time. So that was just a lot. But yeah, we definitely like, we could not have done it without Under Ski Tower is the name of our Polish production company that we befriended. They're like, just like us, like they're a bunch of millennial Polish filmmakers that like work a lot actually with like international like film productions that come through and film in Poland. Eastern Europe's got it going on, y'all. There's like a ton going on over there in the film world. So anyway, we partnered with them, could not have done it without them. And then also met a couple other key like freelance filmmakers, basically just like slowly started to network and like, okay, who do you know? And one girl who turned out to be just an absolute like gold, like just, she was an angel. Met her on Facebook, which is just funny. I found like some sort of Polish filmmaking group on Facebook, and like, you know, whatever. I was looking for like a location, and she responded, and we started chatting, and then she like offered to like, hey, I can like do some scouting for you guys, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, please. So I can say more about her, but she and a couple others plus this team. So we had our Polish like team basically. And then when Anthony and I went out there in August, you know, we did pre-production, and that was just wild. How are we happy we did it? 100%. The film would, like, it is, I think it will feel so much more authentic, and I think it will be a lot more beautiful visually, just beautiful because of the location. The locations we got are absolutely like insanely stunning. And like we hired Polish actors. So it's like, you know, their accents are authentic, a little hard to understand at times, which we're going to have to figure out in post. But yeah, it's just authentic, I think, is the kind of like the key word.
That's awesome. Decision. I cannot wait to see. You can just send me a sneak peek link? Just kidding. You don't have to answer that.
No.
So another question on the producing side, and you don't have to get to hard numbers or anything, but was it in your experience now, and I know you didn't shoot a feature in the United States. Now, technically, you haven't done that, but you were starting to price that stuff out. Do you think you saved money or spent more money by doing it in Poland?
Ooh, interesting. I would probably say that we probably saved money. Or I mean, like, or at least we probably got more. Like our dollar probably went farther.
Yeah.
Certainly for like what we got, right? Like for those beautiful locations we got, for the acting talent, for the props and like the wardrobe, for all those things that we got, you know, it's like we spent, I don't actually know how much the Nazi prisoner uniforms were. We'll say like, I don't know, $20 or something, like to rent it for a month. Right. But something like that. It's like, I don't even begin to know like where the heck would you find a Nazi prisoner uniform in the US? And you have to like get it shipped to whatever. And then, you know, you got to get like 50 of them shipped to wherever you are. And like that costs a bunch of money. And then it's anyway.
Yeah.
So, but it was like, we just like literally drove 45 minutes, picked up all these Nazi prisoner uniforms and like drove them back to set. And we had them for a month, and it was like,
wow,
piece of cake. So yeah, the like ease of getting stuff, the dollar, like literally just like exchange rates goes farther. Things were still expensive. You know, and we did like a bunch of negotiating, and we got a bunch of stuff for free or for discount. Because the Lord just smiled on us over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I think using our budget and like spending it over there, and also people donated, because we had American crew, just a small handful, and a couple American actors that came over. And we were able to find, like within our investor network and other people who were supporting us, they were able to like buy flights or use miles to get people over there. So we actually didn't have to spend that much on travel.
That's
so
amazing.
nice. Yeah.
I think the authenticity part though is like one of those intangibles though that was like, even if it cost more money to do it in Poland, it was the move, like, because I think what you got out of that feature film is going to stand out way beyond something that you could have shot in the United States.
100%.
Even if you, or if to get even close to what you probably got there, it would have cost it triple to get it in the United States because of the sets and the wardrobe and even something that you just talked about, which I didn't even think about, but like how many American actors can pull off, background actors, extras could pull off like the accent correctly.
It's a hard accent. Yeah.
Oh, say
I
something
didn't even think about
say anything in
background.
Polish?
Oh, Polish. Yeah. I'm on the spot. Dzień dobry is good morning or like hello. And then dziękuję is thank you. Jestem głodna means I'm hungry.
Oh, I need to know that one. Jestem głodna.
Something like that. Yeah.
What about one beer, please?
Ooh, I don't know that one.
We got to learn the important lines.
We'll have to
here,
go back to
Ceci.
Poland. We'll go back to Poland to
There we
learn
go,
that one.
So so obviously you're almost through post at this point. What do you feel like are some things that you learned about the industry as a whole, since going through, I would say, pre-production and production mainly? What are some big takeaways that you feel like you've brought home?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so big takeaways. Are you talking about just like, I guess from a producer perspective?
Yeah, like from a producer perspective, what do you feel like are the biggest things that you learned through your process of making this?
That's a good
I know you
question.
probably have a laundry list.
I do have.
She's like, how long do you have for this podcast?
But if we had to narrow it down to like, let's say like max top 3 things that you feel like really resonated with you the most, not like every little detail, but what do you feel like the big takeaways are?
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So what's immediately coming to mind, top 3, I will say people, we'll go with like communication / paperwork / expectations and something I'm thinking about. I would say like keeping the big picture in mind. So then I'll go into each other. So people, I mean, in any job, right? The people are like the most like kind of important part of like what you do, why you're doing it, how you get things done, et cetera, et cetera. We were very, very blessed with just really incredible people on our team. So, Anthony, Andrew, and I are like the core team, and we obviously we have a very good dynamic. We get along very well. We, figure out how to do conflict together, all these things. So that's great. The other people that came onto the team, almost all of them, we had very few issues. And I think that's, from what I've heard, I haven't been on too many productions, but from what I've heard, that's maybe kind of rare. Like a lot of the times maybe there's drama or just like divas or, people don't want to have like the teamwork mentality, whatever. But like the people that were on our production, one of the things I think we weren't able to pay full rates. Some people even volunteered, like some of our crew members from America that flew over. They were there to volunteer and they were all in for 6 weeks. I'm here, I'll do whatever. And so that sort of mentality of I'm here to help and I'm here not just for the money, but I'm here because there's a mission and I support what we're doing and I want to be a part of this. People were there was a heart factor. And so that I think contributed to just the get alongness. That's not a word, but how we were able to collaborate and work together, and there was no drama and all these things. And and not only did we work together for 6 weeks, we also lived together in a gigantic house for 6 weeks. So literally all day, every day was spent together with this core group of people. There were a couple people now. So then on the negative side, there were a couple people that were not culture fits. Really, just one in particular that I can specifically point out who was not a good culture fit, and we found out rather quickly. Thought we could just push through, thought we could bear it, thought we could work with them. And it just slowly got worse and worse. And eventually we actually had to let him go and hire someone else. And so just the entire department that he was in charge of that we then had to pivot, it just wasn't smooth sailing. And so there were some signs at the very beginning, or rather I think we rushed into that relationship and we didn't do our due diligence and we hesitated because he was very, very high profile, like he was very talented, and it felt very much like he was stooping down to our level to work with us. And so we have to like, bow before you. Like, I'm so sorry. And like that it did not create a like good co-working relationship. And it showed fairly early on, and then it got worse, and then it just kind of exploded. So the people, I don't know, I guess the lesson learned would be like just the importance of being very careful with who you bring on. And if you feel something is like a little off or like not quite right, or like, and I certainly felt that with him at the beginning. Like, he was cool to talk to, and was like chill, and, like we're, just, shooting the, I'm not going to say a swear word, but, just like hanging out, whatever. He was like, cool. But there were a few like red flags, I guess. And we just didn't like push into those red flags because it was uncomfortable. And because I didn't want, my people pleaser, I didn't want to like, I don't know, make him upset, or like, no, bro, like we got this budget. Like you literally, and I didn't like lay out specifically, and that came back to bite us in the butt. So anyway, people, both the good and the bad. The other thing that I've learned, the importance of paperwork, not the importance of paperwork, but the importance of setting clear expectations and communicating from the get-go. Yeah, no one likes the paperwork. It's like the least fun thing about all of this, but it's like, actually it can be liberating, I think, as a producer. There's something, I don't know, as I've been like making contracts and just like, dealing with all of that, there's a small part of me that's like, oh, this is kind of nice because it adds clarity. And it's like, okay, like I'm putting this in the contract. I'm expecting you're an adult. You're going to read it. And so if you sign it and if I sign it, then like we're all on the same page of like what the expectations are, what's going to happen. And, everything from like, who, like, this is our movie, like our rights, right? Like that's a big one. And then like, okay, travel, like, here's the expectations with travel. Here's per diem, no per diem, whatever. And like all that kind of stuff. And if it's in a contract and if it's just like clearly laid out and expressed, and it's just like, there's a piece and a like, all right, like we're good. Like we can move forward and do the fun stuff, and we're all starting on the same. But when you don't do that, when you don't get things in writing, and there's just this sort of like, it's not, that can create problems down the road. And there was a little bit of that.
We need to get Ceci a shirt that says paperwork is liberating. that is like such a Ceci piece of clothing right there.
That's hilarious. I did say that. I don't know if I want that t-shirt. Because don't get me wrong, paperwork sucks. Like it's I'm still like finishing the paperwork I should have done at the very beginning of this whole thing. But anyway, that's the other lesson, is don't put it off. Because honestly,
it's the least sexy bit of foreplay to a film or a project. It is. I'm dealing with like 3 contracts right now, and I'm like, I just need somebody to help me finish these contracts, get these over. But to your point, it's that clarity, and I think when we run into the most problems, and we're a very agile business at CinemaStory, we try to move fast. We a lot of times we just work on retainer deposits. Then you pay us the remainder before we send you the file. Like we're fast, and some people don't like to move that fast. And I now realize why you don't always, especially with the bigger names, bigger brands. They want it all in writing, so it's very clearly laid out, and it's such a drag to get through. But when you do it, then it's like, okay, I know how to operate. I know how to play in this field. I'm trying to keep this PG now at this point. I was
gonna say, you said foreplay with the film, and I've never heard that brought up before.
Yeah. At least paperwork is
what is the most sexy piece of foreplay with a film?
Probably playing with Legos, doing the like Andrew and Anthony are doing, kind of making the little scenes happen. The blocking with Legos, that's the sexiest part.
Okay, I like it.
We're going with this foreplay, with this analogy. Okay, so getting back to paperwork. No, but for real, like
Ceci is turning red in the studio.
If you can't hear, you can see the redness on camera.
See the red, sure. Can't hear it. So anyway, paperwork, contracts, all that is super important. Clearly communicating expectation. Like if we had done that with this guy, like if we had like gone through the process, and it's like, I know these things, but then you're there in the moment, and you're like, not starstruck, but just like, oh, big important person, and who am I? And I'm so sorry, sir. I'm in your presence. Forgive me. Like, it's just all of my like things I know, just it's all gone. But if we had like done the things, if we had, made the contract, talked about like expectations and communicated, we could have avoided, we probably wouldn't have hired him and then like ultimately saved ourselves heartache.
Right. Because I'm about to say, because sometimes it's a personality thing. So even with a contract in place, but you're right. You might have been, he might have never signed it,
right.
And then you would have been able to skip that bullet.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. And then the other thing, big lesson learned, and I'm like constantly like just kind of like learning more and more about this one, like keeping the big picture in mind. And so I've been thinking preparing for this podcast, I've been thinking like a lot more about that. And like when it comes to making a feature film, or at least like making an indie film for the first time in my case, something I think that like I've learned is keeping the big picture in mind of like, why are we making this film? Who is it for? What do we want to do with it? How much can we make back? And like, do I want to make another film? Like, how do I be successful with this one so that I can do it again? And so Anthony, to his credit, was very, very smart with like how he approached this film and like the budget that we set. Like with Catholic saint movies, historically, they spend millions of dollars because it's period pieces, which are just very expensive. And then they just, go big on the budget, spend millions, and then they either, barely make their money back or they lose money. Like, with the distribution deals with the box office, whatever. And so that's not a sustainable model. So Anthony was like, okay, we're not going to do that with this one. We're going to keep the budget very small. He thought with this like particular story, with it taking place mostly in a single location, that would help with the budget, limited, resources and whatnot to try and keep the budget low so that, if we make a couple million, hopefully like with our distribution deal in the box office and whatever, then, our investors make their money back. We make a little profit, and then, we have a successful film under our belts. We can do it again. And so that's the big picture. And we also like keeping our, our audience in mind and like knowing who will want to watch this film. And like, we are a very, very niche, film, basically. Like, it's a Catholic saint movie, like, and there may be a few other, like, there may be some, Protestant, like non-denominational, like other people who like want to watch film like this, history buffs, maybe there are some like more like philosophical intellectual thinkers who might be intrigued by the like, themes of like, suffering and like suicide and like, what's the meaning of life and the meaning of death and like all these things. So like we might appeal to like multiple pockets of people, but like our primary audience, like we know who they are. And specifically also when it comes to getting funding and getting funding, and then like ultimately our like kind of distribution, like keeping them in mind. So anyway, keeping those big picture questions, things in mind, has been a very big learning experience for me. Like as I've been going through this process, and I've been kind of noticing how Anthony's been like approaching that, like even like from the get-go, and like even now, like where we're at in the process, like it's like kind of stepping back, and it's very easy for me to get like caught up in the details and caught up in the weeds and the logistics and like all these like little things that are happening on a day-to-day basis, and just getting sucked in to all these like little problems. But like stepping back and looking at the big picture of like, okay, what is this film that we're making? Okay, what are we trying to do? Okay, I want to be able to do this again. And so that means, and then like working backwards from like, what is the end goal? I think that's, I don't know. Maybe that's not something that a lot of beginner filmmakers think about, because they like, maybe get jazzed about like, oh, let's make a film. And like, yeah. And it's very exciting. And it's like, it's magic. I really believe like filmmaking is like movie magic. Like that's a thing. And I think it's very easy to get swept away with the magicness of the fun that is making a film. And two, I know you love talking about the business side, but like forgetting about that side because it's not as sexy, kind of like the paperwork. But like very important. If you want to do the fun stuff again, like you got to do this stuff really well and be really strategic and really smart with like, don't make a $3 million movie. A, if you can't get $3 million, but B, if you don't think you can make it back, like, what's that for?
Yeah, even if you can get $3 million, don't make a $3 million film if you can't get it back.
Right.
Don't do it, because that's the last one you're going to do.
Unless you're Terrence Malick. He can get away with that.
Yeah.
He's the exception, not the norm.
Yeah. You got to have a big brand name, I guess, or just a lot of artsy friends that
Exactly.
keep funding that. God.
So off the record,
Off.
you had mentioned to us a lot of the things in production during this film did not go according to plan.
Oh, it all went perfectly. I don't know what you're referring to, actually.
Can you talk about any of the challenges that you guys faced and how you overcame those during the making of the film?
Wowzers. Okay, challenges that we faced, how we overcame them. Man. Okay, so I mean the challenge one that I mentioned earlier, just like how do we meet people in a foreign country?
Yeah.
So like I don't know anyone in Poland. Anthony didn't know anyone in Poland. So like overcoming that challenge was as simple as like I think he posted in a Facebook group that he was in, like a Catholic creative group. Does anyone know anyone in Poland? Like literally that's how he started. And then through that, like one person met another person. So, that simple challenge.
7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
That's right.
Basically, yeah.
I thought it was 6 degrees of
Is it
separation.
6? Well, I added one more.
Yeah, 6 plus 1.
The world's a little bigger.
But yeah, so I guess the, challenge of like, we don't know anyone in this country. We want to like work in this country. Like, how do we work in this country? Like literally just ask who you know. And like, people know people and like those people know other people. And so that's just kind of incredible. Also what I did when we were looking for our Polish producing partners, I just went online and I can't remember. I don't know what I searched, something like Polish production companies or, whatever, just starting somewhere, which is obviously like the cold route. Like, you go the warm route, like, who do you know? And like that actually like worked beautifully. Like we met some really great people, like just kind of through that crazy rabbit connections. That's not a thing.
Rabbit connections. I like that.
It's another t-shirt.
But yeah, I just like did a like Google search. And I think I found like this list of like Polish production companies that went to the Cannes festival or something. And so I was like scrolling through this PDF and just like writing down all these notes and just like emailed like a bunch of them. And then, eventually that email went to that email and we had a handful of conversations and we eventually met our production company. But so like the overcoming the challenge there, just do the thing, just, talk to who you know, like go the warm route. Cause you never know, like, it's just kind of crazy. Like that it's still crazy. Like how we met some of these people. If you trace it back, to like where like that connection started, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool, God. And then, just going the cold route. So that was one challenge.
What about the language barrier?
Well, luckily, a lot of people in Poland speak English. Certainly in the big cities, so like Warsaw is where we spent most of our pre-production time, at least. So most people in the city speak English, especially the younger generation, which is, our producing partners were all like millennials, basically. I mean, yeah, the language barrier came into play when we were just trying to survive, right? So like all the just signage, like there's no English signage, it's all just Polish, and Polish looks nothing like English. Like it's not like Italy or Spain or whatever, where it's like, that kind of looks like the word restaurant, maybe. It's like everything has J's and K's and Y's and Z's, and it's like, I have no idea.
Didn't you get pulled? I'm going to call you out on the air, but didn't you get pulled over driving in Poland? And I think I saw this on your Instagram. So how was that? Did the officer speak English, or was that?
Yes, he did.
Okay, because I just was imagining how funny, but I'm glad it was post like, hey, I just got pulled over, everything's good.
Yeah.
I like U-turned or something. I don't remember what
I
you did.
just flipped a U in the middle of the street, which I was. This
and
is one
Cecilia is not a rule breaker. Let me just say
not
this.
at
Cecilia,
all.
So Cecilia produced for us for a really long time, and she's like the do the right thing person. So when I saw this on social media, I just was cracking up. I was like, Cecilia is about to get arrested in Poland. She's like the last person to get arrested.
Yeah.
And she flipped a U in and got pulled over.
Funny. Speaking of Cecilia doing the right thing, there was also a story with the director almost getting deported from in the middle of production, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh, that might be better than the Huey.
And I was like, what is Ceci going to do? Is she going to break the law and keep the director on set, or is she going to ship him off and she direct the rest of the film?
We sort of broke the law, but I figure it's for a good cause. So, all will be forgiven. But no, I did get pulled over, and he was very nice. Very nice officer, but found out that so another challenge that we had to overcome, this is again a sexy aspect of filmmaking is when it comes to like logistics, travel, accommodations. Travel and accommodations. So we had to get rental cars, and that turned. I could like speak for hours on the disaster, just the catastrophe that was trying to rent cars in Poland. So you have to get an international driver's permit, which thankfully like Anthony told me about and I got before like going to Poland. But yeah, so it's very expensive to rent cars in America, and you know it adds up over the course of 3 months in Poland. And so we rented a lot of cars, and we found, or we were like, we have to find something cheaper than just the normal, you know, they don't have Hertz or like Enterprise or whatever. It's like, you know, the Polish version of those, like the ones at the airport, like the well-known established ones. And so those were more pricey. So we found this company called Broom Broom, and they were recommended.
Vroom, like V?
With the B.
Oh, Broom
Broom. Broom Broom.
I feel like you gotta say
shout
that
out,
like
Broom Broom.
in an accent, like Broom Broom. You know
that's
what I mean?
probably what they were going for. But literally, they, it was not as nice as I will try to keep it. I'll try to keep it. Kind.
Take back the shout out, Broom Broom.
Yep. Yeah.
Or Broom Broom.
Yeah.
Vroom, vroom. Yeah, it literally, we pulled up, first off, it's not in the city. We had to drive like 45 minutes out into the country. We pull up, it's like this dirt road, looks like an alley. And we like pull up to the address, and it's like, it looks like just a junkyard, like just a car, like all these like salvaged cars and whatnot. And we're kind of like exchanging looks with each other, and we're like, is this the right address? And I'm like, yeah, I think we're here. And so, like call the guy, and he comes out, and super friendly, super nice. He's Catholic, just like everyone in Poland. And so we're like talking about the film. He's getting super excited, and he's like, okay, I think like this will be the car for you guys. And it's like this European van or whatever. And he's like, yeah, Joe over here. His name wasn't Joe. It's like some Polish name. He's going to, go take it for a spin, make sure it still runs. And we're just like, make sure it still runs? What are you talking about? And so, thankfully the car was still running. But that was, I don't know if you saw this Instagram video, but I was driving said van, a couple days later or whatever, broke down in the middle of the highway in Poland. So that was a fun little adventure. So anyway, all that to say, all of the cars that we rented from Broom Broom, and because they were cheap, we rented many cars from Broom Broom. And there was another one that broke down. There was one that had like weird transmission shifting issues. There was one that like, the handle came off. It was just...
You got what you paid for.
We got what we paid for. And unfortunately, that's like all we could pay for,
yeah.
Like with the budget. And so just talk about challenges, like those like logistical things, like we have to transport stuff, in a foreign country, and we don't none of us brought our cars with us. And so there's just all of these, that's the tricky thing about not filming at home is like we have our houses and we have our cars and we have our people and connections. And so in a foreign country, we have none of those things. So it's like, that was additional cost, and we were forced to get cars that fell apart. Thankfully, nothing bad.
The big thing that I hear when I'm listening to you though is like the grit and tenacity that y'all had to have to get this thing done. And that's one of the non-sexy things about filmmaking too. And it's like people talk about it, but Shane loves to bring up the story of I think Tony Armour, who was on our show, mentioned it, but like if somebody's made 30 short films and not one feature, and another person's made one feature, you're going to hire the person that made the one feature to do your next movie. And you guys are doing, you like showcasing all of the grit that it takes to get this film done. And when you look back, like you're going to be like, wow, I have this final product and it's going to do amazing, and y'all are going to make money, and you're going to do another one, and it's going to be, awesome. So I just have a lot of respect and admiration for all of the, continuing through adversity that you guys did when making this film. Cause I know that you're like scratching the tip of the iceberg when talking about the headaches that you like overcame to do this. So just hats off to you for making the film.
Thank you.
All right. So one last producer question that I got to ask you for Poland. I'm sure we could talk about, I want to keep talking about Poland for like 3 more hours, but how just the production flow. Did y'all make your days? Did you get behind? Did you stay on schedule? What did that look like for this specific project?
Yes, good. So for the most part, we stayed according to like the shooting schedule, which is really great and has a lot to do, with the whole team that we were working with. There were So obviously it's a pretty ambitious script, even though Anthony wrote it with the intention of being simple. It was not. And so we had some pretty ambitious shooting days. The way we broke it up, we had all of the stuff that took place inside the cell, which again, about 70% of the script. So, if the script is 100 pages, it was like 70 pages or something. And most of that's like dialogue. It's like a lot of talking in the cell.
But that's such a challenge too for a cinematographer and a director to find an interesting way to tell that story in a room the size of this, more or less, called a 15 by 15 or whatever it was. And then to make 70 minutes almost like stretch in an interesting way to keep it. Like, I think that is one of the most fascinating things about what y'all did in your film, just from a, artistic standpoint. Like, hats off to you in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. And so, like, to that point there, there's a lot of like blocking, sitting, standing, moving, fighting, things that happen to try and make that interesting. So we put obviously all of those shooting days, like they were in a chunk all together. It was like 2.5 weeks maybe. And then all of the other scenes, it was like you got the flashbacks, you got the Auschwitz exteriors, you got there's like some dream sequence stuff. So all of that we shot, kind of in a chunk before we went into the cell. And so that was like another, 2-3 weeks kind of spread out a little bit. And those, so like we started off on those days, like everything's like, going pretty well, going according to schedule. We're hitting our days. One of the days in particular, it was at the Nazi commandant's house. So it was this gorgeous like mansion, like 1940s era mansion, that we got. And it was just the day was too packed. And we like figured this out, I think like on maybe like the day before. We were like trying to put together the actual, like the scenes, in order, like, okay, how we're going to shoot this. And this is going to be the plan. And I'm talking with Anthony and Andrew, and they were just like, oh, we need more time. So we had to break that day into 2 days. So I think we actually added a day, like to that location, which, added some money and stuff, but it ended up being like the right decision because it was just too much we were trying to pack into that day.
Wait, so I just heard you were the producer. It sounds like you were the production coordinator or project manager, and then kind of AD. It sounds like, because you're doing you're helping set the day flow.
Yeah, that was another lesson that I learned.
You wore a lot of hats.
I wore too many hats, and that's the lesson. Is I should have mentioned this and that, but going back to your other question real quick. So, production department and AD department should not be overlooked and should be like paid attention to, and one should not try to do multiple jobs at once. Well, if you do that, don't expect to do any of them particularly well. And so yes, so I was wearing too many hats, and I trying to like AD, trying to make schedule, and trying to produce / be project or production manager / production coordinator. Just all of that at once, just not a good idea. Thankfully, towards the end of the production, we had some people come on board, and this woman came on board, and she was able to take over basically the AD department. So she was making the schedule and all that. But you're right.
You were juggling a lot.
I was juggling a lot. Yeah. In an effort to like, save on budget and blah, blah, blah. But I think I probably would not have reached burnout nearly as fast, which I did reach towards the end. It was so good. And it probably would have been just a better experience for everyone. The schedules would have been done, on time versus like 4:00 the day before, and I'm like just getting to it. And the girl who's putting together our call sheets like messaging me all day like, do you have a schedule, and I'm like, no. So
I feel like every production, and I haven't been on that many features, but I never get a call sheet until like 2 or 3 hours before I'm going to bed.
So that's the interesting thing, is that's been my experience. And again, similarly, I haven't been on too many productions, but it's always like late at night, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But in Poland, that's not how they do it. At least that's not how this like production company we're working with did it. And they do, there are things that they do that are just like slightly different that in my mind, I'm like, that's a bad idea. Like, why would we do it that way? Like, that makes no sense. Like, if there are changes, like they wanted to send out the call sheet before we finished filming the day before. And that makes zero sense to me, because it's like things are constantly changing. And so then like, you don't know what scenes you're going to finish, what you're going to be doing tomorrow. There might be like, you may finish the scenes for today, and totally change. Oh, we don't need to film this. We don't need to film this. We have to get pickups for this. Like, oh, and actually let's get this act, So
it keeps people on the ready, but on the other side, it's harder for the actors because you're like, oh, I'm up tomorrow. Oh, wait, now I just got the call sheet now and I'm not up.
Yeah,
but then the other side, it's like, oh, but you're not going to find out till 8 p.m. And so it is so hard. It's hard. Choice for the producer side, but I'm impressed that I'm impressed you were doing it at 4 p.m. That I'm like, good on you. That's good timing.
They weren't going out at 4 p.m. I'll tell you that. But I forget what I was talking about. So the Fritsch house. Yeah. So anyway, that location, we ended up duplicating the day, and we did it over 2 days. We had to push our Auschwitz. We had 2 days scheduled for Auschwitz, which those were also very ambitious. Those were like, start at 4 a.m., finish, after sundown sort of thing. So like you're looking at 16-hour days, at least for like, some of the people. We had to reschedule those because the forecast was snow on the days we were supposed to film those. So that was pretty cool. And it ended up not snowing, but like we were looking at the forecast, just like watching the weather. Because it like we had to like match, the weather had to match a previous scene that we shot. And so anyway, we rescheduled those 2 days. And so that ended up like rescheduling that ended up pushing a bunch of stuff back. So all that to say, to answer your question, for the most part, the flow of production, we hit our days. And Anthony and Andrew were very, like, they were, to their credit, like they're very creative and they're very like, they're very creative. But they understand the time limitations, they understand the budget limitations, and they didn't fight me that hard with like some of these things where you're like, the creative and the business are butting heads. Then they were very willing to like push like on their own, like in their own like creative things they were doing, or like sacrifice even like for the sake of budget.
Do you think because the director, and I don't know if the DP was involved, Andrew was involved, but they were both, Anthony is involved in the funding of it, right? Mm-hmm. So he had to be wrapped up in the business side and the art side.
Yeah.
And I see like when he got to Poland, maybe he could let you handle a lot of the business side so he could focus on the art side. But because of his attachment, I feel like, to the business side, it allows that artist to realize where I can take and where I have to give, right? Mm-hmm. And so that way, that's really cool to hear that they were able to balance that and weigh that out. And I feel like, every commercial production I do, if I direct it, I'm on the business and the art side, and I have to be so focused on the business side because we have to keep the client in mind and the budget and all of that stuff. So that's always on the forefront for me. And so I like that ability to have somebody like a Cecilia that takes the business side from us so that way the artist can know that zone, but they also have to know thyself, right? And thy budget and know like, all right, it's not just all about what I want to do and how long I want to do it. I've got to think about, like you said at the very beginning, the big picture, right? You got to think about the big picture and where do I have to sacrifice? And then where does the budget or the other people have to sacrifice to get this done for the greater good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. We have so much to unpack with you. We're going to have to make this like a 2-parter, have you back, hopefully one day back in the studio. Because there's so much more. I mean, I know y'all are in post-production right now. I'm excited to hear about that process. And I know you're, going through the marketing to distribution side soon, which I've always wanted to unpack and understand more. But you have been amazing showing us just a glimpse of what it takes to do the pre-production and even the fundraising. I love the fundraising aspect. And now the production as well in a foreign country for the first time making a feature film. But before we wrap you out, we have 3 questions we ask every guest.
Exciting.
Are you ready? Joey's going to launch you on this first one.
So the first question for you is, if you could go back in time and do it all again in your career, what is one thing that you would do differently as a filmmaker?
In my career? Like going all the way back. Wowzers. Okay. What's one thing I would do differently?
Yeah. Because this is for our, full-time freelancers that are trying to come up in filmmaking. So anything that stands out in your mind that, something that you would have done differently that might help somebody else out.
Okay. I was not expecting this question. That's a good question.
Yeah. We like dropping bombs right at the end.
Wait,
can we do that again? I got to
3, 2, 1.
Brilliant. Love you guys. I'm honestly pretty happy with how I did it.
Met Shane and Joey at CinemaStory in
I know,
the rest was
2017.
So, okay, one thing that's coming to mind that's just popping into my head. In college, there was a club called Swamp, Screenwriting, Acting, Movie Production. I don't actually know what the M and the P stood for. But because there's no film degree at A&M, this was like the only thing that they had that was like movie film related, as far as I knew. And I got involved, did one of those like 24-hour like short film races, super fun. But I wasn't into film at the time, and I didn't like have any interest in like actually pursuing film, which is hilarious now. So like I just did that one thing, like, oh, that was cool, and like never did it again. I guess I wish I had, like, knowing what I'm like doing now, I wish I had like just done more with that and those people then, but you know, that would have changed the trajectory of everything. I'm trying to think if there's a better.
I'm gonna make this a hybrid like follow up to this same question, because this whole film has been about Triumph of the Heart. If you could go back in time and do it all again differently, making the film, what is the one thing that you would change if you could do it again differently?
I think I would give myself more help at the beginning. And whether that means like finding someone to like volunteer as like a production coordinator, or because there were people that wanted to help us. And one of my biggest weaknesses is I try to control and I want to do it all. And that rarely goes well. And so I think knowing the burnout that I like was like seriously facing like at the end of my time in Poland, and just those feelings and that like, I don't know, probably like resentment and like just a lot of like I wanted to go home. I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to go to work today. Like, it's just so hard. Like, there were just so many hard things. And I was just emotionally like, I'm done. But I was like, I can't. And so I just had to push through, and like, praise the Lord, I did. And he gave me the strength to do it. But I think like that could have been at least alleviated some if I had sought more help at the beginning and not tried to like do it all. And, you know, part of that's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I was like figuring it out the whole way through, still am. But I think one thing I would do differently is I would either like put in a little more effort to try and find like a buddy, like a production department buddy, someone to like share the load with, I guess, and like delegate to.
The D word, delegate. It's so hard. I get it. And producing, you feel so responsible for everything. And so you have to put your trust in somebody else. And that is really hard unless you have that close relationship and you can go, all right, I know this person's got it.
Yeah.
And so,
Which,
and
like,
when you're working on a budget or on an indie feature, and it's hard to, you know, have the ability to have that person, or even, you know, accept the offering of the gift of somebody to say, yeah, I'll come out and volunteer. That's even hard to do. I know that from experience, even on projects that we've done. It's hard to, you know, all right, you're giving of your time, and now let me dump all this stuff on you and me not feel bad about doing that to you.
I think something that has just been danced around though throughout this entire conversation, at least when talking about that very thing, like accepting volunteer work or getting help when you can't afford it, is there is a cost to be, you know, there is a price to doing stuff with a low budget and trying to fit too much into a budget. And it's like, I'm doing another project right now where that's the same thing, where I was like, I know that their budget is tight, but I wanted to do this project, but there is a price to be spent for everybody involved in projects like that. And knowing the price is at least something that helps to be knowledgeable about when you go into it and say, I know this is going to be, you know, excruciating in so many areas, or we're going to have this dream that we just can't bring to life this day, or we're going to have to wear 12 hats today each. And knowing the price of not having a budget is just a good thing to be aware of when going into a project, when there's just not enough hands or money or whatever to do what needs to be done. So
That's so true.
The beautiful thing is you're on the other side of it. You're through the production.
Right.
You're there.
That's right.
All right.
Right.
Second question. What is one piece of advice you have for a filmmaker that is trying to grow in their craft
Aw,
or business?
love that. What is one piece of advice? Ooh, okay. I guess I would say to keep in mind, this is kind of what I said earlier. To keep the end goal in mind, like to keep the big picture in mind, because like I was saying, it is very easy to get swept up in the moment, just in the awesomeness that is filmmaking. Like I think it is. I don't want to say addicting, but there's something about it that's like pulls you back. Like, that was so much fun. Let's do it again. And like I've felt that, and so I get it. But I think in order to be able to do something sustainably or to do it over and over again, I think maybe I'm trying to say, like, it's important to know why you're doing something. Like what, because maybe your goal isn't to make money. Maybe you just want to make films because it like lights up this creative fire inside of you and you feel like you're expressing, yourself to the world, and like that's enough for you, and that's great if that's what it is. So I guess maybe my advice would be to like know thyself, like know why you're here, like why you're here, why you're doing this thing, and then don't lose sight of that bigger picture, and that why has changed for me. Honestly, I can say like, from the time I like first got involved with film, like 5 years ago, 6, several years ago, and then working on short films, and then working on features, and now producing a feature, like my why has kind of changed. And like now I look back at the things I used to do, or I see other filmmakers doing things, and it's like my why is like slightly different. And as I learn more, my why has been changing. And so I think in order to maybe like feel that like satisfaction and fulfillment, and to like not reach burnout, I think it's important to know like why you're doing something, like what you're doing it for. Is there a bigger purpose, or is it simply like creative expression? And then when it comes to like, the creative and the business side, like I was saying, if that goal is to like, I want to make a living doing this, all right, great. Then that means a bunch of other things that like you got to figure out how to do if you want to be able to do this sustainably and not just, shoot some pretty stuff. So is that advice?
That's great.
It is good advice.
Okay,
And I was actually talking with a really good friend of mine recently just about the other side of the money thing, which is just literally the love of the art. And, after doing their creative job for a while, they got to a place to where it burnt them out. And they made the decision that they never want to do another creative job again, because of how the job piece affects the creativity within you. And they still want to create. They love creating, but they don't want to do it for a living anymore, because when your creative expression is wrapped up in, all of these other logistics and pieces, it can wear at the artist inside of you. And so if you struggle or just want to do art because it feels good, there is a piece that you have to look at on the business side. And if you want to do it for a business, sometimes, it's just a give and take, but it is an interesting, paradigm to look at, that. So it's awesome. All right. Last question for you. Who is one filmmaker who has inspired you or your work?
Oh my gosh, you guys, these questions. Okay. I am the worst. You guys know me. I am so bad at watching movies. One filmmaker. Okay. I can think of someone.
It can even be a movie.
Yeah.
And we'll look up who was, because I'm the worst at names. So I don't know if you're struggling with that right now.
Filmmaker who's inspired me.
I wish y'all could see Ceci right now. She looks like Zach Galifianakis when all the numbers are like going behind her in the meme, and she's trying to calculate who it is.
Okay, I'll just pop into my head. We're just gonna run with it. I'm gonna say Dallas Jenkins, the captain of the ship that is the Chosen. I think I don't know everything about his story, but I think like his leadership, the way he is like not getting caught up by the things of this world, like the money and the fame and the fortune and whatever. Like I think he is pursuing like the Lord and like trying to glorify the Lord like with what he's doing, and I think it shows in his work. And there's just so, I mean, now that they're like so big, there's like so much pressure and attention and like gosh, like I literally cannot imagine like the weight that I can't imagine he doesn't feel. And again, like I know very little about like, you know, him. I don't like listen to interviews or podcasts or anything, but just like seeing what he has produced and being a part of, like, I've been on his crew and like being a part of like his production and like just experiencing that, it's like, oh, there's something special here. And like this, like these people are like, they're doing something right. And that comes from the top down, I believe. And so I think that's, and Anthony and I, like we tried to run our production similarly. Like we tried to set a certain tone of like, this is how we're going to treat people. This is how we're going to do production. This is how we're going to work. And we got so many like positive, like compliments, feedback from cast and crew that we worked with in Poland. People were just blown away by like the experience of working with us and being on our set, being involved in our film. And that was like so encouraging. And I just like, I loved that feedback. And so I think, I don't know, like leadership is very difficult. It's very lonely at the top, as they say. And I've experienced a little bit of that, you know, in my small little world. And, you know, I've no idea like what the Lord's calling me to like down the road as far as like leadership and filmmaking and like all these things. But I think like what Dallas has done, what he's doing, how he runs his ship, how he leads, and then also like how he like doesn't lose sight of the big picture, how he like keeps his focus on like telling a good story, just like making a good like TV series. And like you watch this show and it's like, this is good. This is pretty good. Like, I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know, like just what's going on in that brain of his. But anyway, I would say he's inspired me. And that's
great.
To me.
Dallas is on the list to definitely get on the podcast as well.
Oh,
Shout out
look,
to Dallas.
He's got it
the
on
Dallas
his
hat repping.
Yeah. Well, Ceci, before we wrap you out of here, what can people do right now to support the film or see the film, or is there any kind of call to action that you want to put out there to our Rough Cut Club? How can they get involved, or when can they expect to see this film?
Cool. Thanks for asking. I would say, so right now, or at least like, you know, the next couple months, there's no like hard call to action. Like we're not raising funds or, you know, the movie's not out, anything like that. But I would say what you can do if you want to like follow along, follow us on social. Instagram's the main dealio, Triumph of the Heart, at Triumph of the Heart. You can like sign up for our like email, just like news list to like get the updates and whatnot. Just go to our website, triumphoftheheart.com, and there's a way to like, you know, sign up for the email list. So that's like the only thing you can do like right this moment. I guess if I'm speaking to a bunch of filmmakers listening to this podcast, we will be over the next several months. So you know, this comes out in like May or whatever, May, June, we will be hiring like, you know, some post-production people. So we have a spot on our website, like a work with us form. So if you're interested, if you want to like see what we're about, you can like, you know, fill out the form and try and work with us. But I would say the main thing is just follow us on social, get in our email list. As far as when the film will come out, that's a great question, which I don't have a good answer to at the moment. I'm hoping the film will be finished within the next like 4 to 5 months. So what is that from now? Like July, August, something like that. And then as far as like distribution, that's a whole other can of worms that I'm like just starting to pry open and try to understand and count the worms inside. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this year, maybe next year. Don't know. But if you want to find out, just follow us and we'll tell you for sure.
Love it. If people want to get connected to you and get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I would say hit me up on Instagram. I have a business account, Cecilia Produces Films. I'm sure it'll be linked in the description below and all that good stuff. But yeah, shoot me a DM. And I'll hit you back.
Ceci, you have been awesome. Thank you for coming by. You know what? I'm coining a new term right now. This is officially the clubhouse. This
I
is the
love it.
clubhouse.
I
It's
love
the
it.
in-person, the Rough Cut Clubhouse.
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming by the clubhouse today in
Welcome.
person and doing an episode with us. You
Yeah.
are fam, and we are proud of you on your journey making this movie. We cannot wait to see it, and appreciate you giving our audience some wisdom that you have learned on your journey making Triumph of the Heart.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time on the Rough Cut Club.
To the heart.
Oh.